1:45, let's go live. Hello everyone, welcome to today's live tutorial. We're going to do a bit of a mermaid tutorial today. Let me just get set up on my iPad. There we go. Hello, welcome! I'm much earlier than usual. Usually I do my live streams about 9 o'clock. Today it is 1:46 in the afternoon, which I'm excited about because I can chat to a whole bunch of different people and, oh, I see some regulars are here anyway. Yay, I caught you. Yes, I've completely switched up the time today, mostly because I want people to start playing earlier in the day today, I guess. So I'm going to do a live tutorial. I will double film this. This is currently being double filmed, so I'll put it on my blog afterwards, just in case you have to dip out or if you miss it, which I guess you wouldn't be hearing it in that case. So it'll be up on my blog later, all of that to say. That's where you can find it. Hey everyone, hello! So, just a bit of a backstory. This is my third year doing Merbèbè, and I personally do really enjoy it, although I think sometimes I give off the impression that it's something I don't want to do, and I think the thing that happens there is I catch myself accidentally telling everyone that I'm just a little overwhelmed with my work schedule. And it usually falls around this time as well, because it's earlier enough in the year to still have your rest of the year plans, and a lot of the pre-prep and planning happens around this time. So I'm always juggling like all those thoughts in my head at the same time, although I love doing Merbèbè. And the thing is, it is its own challenge, but I do mermaids throughout the year anyway, so it doesn't feel like I'm ever missing out if I don't do it, but I really do enjoy doing it. Last year, well, the first year we did all random mermaids, so it was like every day I sat down and I tried something different. Different styles, different mediums, different aesthetics, and then the second year, which is last year, I decided to do kind of all very simple illustrations, and they were, I mean, they weren't totally simple, but they were just a pencil underline, and then I outlined it all with ink, which was great. I loved that too. But this year I wanted to create a much larger piece, because I thought if I'm going to work on something for 31 days, like there should be a big payoff, right? And I love having all like the 31 drawings, but to be honest, they just kind of sit around my house or put into storage, and it kind of makes me sad that they're all just in storage. So I thought if I could make a big piece, then I might even be able to frame it or just like hang it up in my studio or something and just be, I don't know, just feel really good about having made something really big. Hi, I cannot find where to put these videos. So these videos are all on my blog. I put all of these on jameslukeburke.com in the journal section. That's where I'm putting all the daily Merbèbè videos and the downloadable mermaids. That's where you can find them. This will also end up there as well. So the link is always in my bio, and I hope that helps. I started with trying to figure out how many mermaids I needed. 31, you don't want to make that mistake and accidentally miss one. And then I came up with a layout. So I actually have this massive 18 by 21 inch page. Is it 18 by 22? I don't know what size it is actually. I think it's 18 by 21. And I have 31 mermaids mapped out on there. So I actually had to put them in kind of rows. And I have 2, 4, 6, 7, 6, 4, 2. So it kind of creates this oval shape of all the mermaids. Now I wanted to settle on a style because I didn't want them all to look different. I wanted it to look like it was one cohesive piece, but that it would just take the whole month to complete. So I came up with this. Hello Victory, hi everyone. So I came up with this style here. You can see I went through a few different versions. This is what might have been if I didn't settle on the style that I liked. And I really like the style that I set on. So then I tested out a few different mediums, I guess. I wanted to see whether, because I liked the graphite, I thought it was really pretty, and I wanted to see which ones I kind of preferred. The finishing styles, so the rendering styles is what I would usually say, but the Faber-Castell graphite, the Aquarelle and the HB was just way too light for me. This was the Pilot OPT mechanical pencil, this one here, and a blending tool. This is a little papillon, I think? I'm not quite sure how to really say that. It's a paper blender. So this is really great because it'll do all the smudging for you, unlike my mum, who will just lick her fingertip and smudge it into the page. None of that DNA blending, just a little paper tool there. So that was fun. I liked that. I thought it was really soft and really pretty, but I wanted to try the other things. A tortillon? That's it. A papillon is a butterfly, right? Me and my fake French. So then I decided to put the other versions down here as well, and then I used these water-soluble graphite pencils. The one I am using, so this is my setup for Merbèbè. Tortillon. Okay, there you go. This is what I'm using for Merbèbè this year. It's just an Art Graph 2B water soluble graphite pencil. I've got the Pentel Aquash. I think someone asked me what grey was in this. It's actually not a grey, it's just water. The grey you're seeing is from when I activate the graphite, because the graphite is water soluble. So that's the grey that people are seeing. And then I've got this little eraser. It's a Tombow Mono Knock eraser. Mine's broken, but I still really like it. And the Pilot OPT 0.5 mechanical pencil. This is just for like finer details. And yeah, I don't super need this. I think if you were going to get away with anything, if you just had a water brush or a paintbrush with some water and a water-soluble graphite, you'll be fine to do this. So, if you don't have a water-soluble graphite, also grab a watercolor pencil. I've got a Derwent black one here. I've even got some, what are these ones called? These Museum Aquarelle by Caran d'Ache. I have some Faber-Castell ones over there too. So yeah, grab a watercolor pencil if you don't have that, and let's get onto it. Sorry, those are my samples. And then I had to choose size, because I was actually going to do it much smaller, and this is how small they were going to be, but I just felt like I couldn't get enough detail in there. I talk about scale in my online workshops, but I'll just mention it again. It's always much easier, I think, to scale down than to scale up, but you lose a lot of detail. And depending on the mediums you use, there was only so fine I could get this point, and there was only so much I could do with all the blending before it just started to look really like it was missing something. So I settled on this size that I thought was perfect. And I eventually had to go and get a massive sheet of paper so that I could fit them all on there, because 31 at this size, I mean, it's quite big. So that's where everything started and how it came to be. This is, I've since been experimenting with the same look, but just in different styles. So this is a really mixed media style I did that I'm really obsessed with. So, you know, it's your preference. If you just want to learn this to draw the base out today and you want to take this and run with it in your own favorite mediums, you want to do it in crayons, you want to do it in paint or markers, please, by all means, be my guest, enjoy the lesson, and do with it what you will. So, I'm going to set myself up, make sure I'm really in frame here, because I am double filming this for the blog. There we go. Can you all see that? Hopefully that's pretty good. Alright, I'm going to do my best to try and look at the comments too, but forgive me if I just get stuck straight into the teaching and then the world disappears. I've got this with my water-soluble graphite pencil. The first thing I'm going to do is the head, because I have a really nice head shape that I like for these, and I'm going to start at the bottom. Essentially it's a really like fat teardrop. So I'm going to start at the bottom and just push out to the sides, because I like to create the point of it first. That's going to be our chin. And then I'm going to create a big bulbous head on top of that. So if you really you'll also notice I'm changing the pressure of my pencil. If you were to look at this, it would be a teardrop that it was really fat. So that's what I'm going to go for. I'll try and go a little bit darker so you can see. As you're doing this, one of the features of the style that I'm really enjoying about it is that it is, the pressure changes when you're doing your lines. So I know we look at this in brush lettering. If you're going to do some brush lettering, usually it would be, you know, downward strokes you would go really heavy on your brush, and then upward strokes you'd go much lighter. I'm terrible at it, so I just fake it. But we're looking at the same principle with the pencil. You can do the same thing. It's not a super dramatic difference, but you can notice the difference in the pressure that you apply to the pencil. So you can get a really good line weight variation, which is a super interesting effect to have. So let's just do that as we're drawing. It doesn't really matter where you do it, but just change the pressure of your pencil as you're drawing. So now right in the bottom of this teardrop, her little chin, I'm going to put a tiny dash. It's just this shape. It is a dash. It is so small. It's her tiny little mouth. You can change any of this as you go if you don't like it. But that is how I'm doing them. They're so tiny, they're just a dash. So if some of them look like they're subtly smiling, it's an accident, because all I've been doing is that. It's a dot. It's so small when I do it. Now right on the side of the face, we don't want to go too far up. If we're going to do a face map on this teardrop, like I would do for if I wanted anything to have continuity, or I was practicing faces, you know how we'd usually kind of section off the face into quadrants and sectors? If I was really going to look at it, all of this face happens down here. Like, you've got a whole bunch of nothing going on up in this space. So don't go too far up, but go out. You really want to go out wide, and you're going to do these really flat U shapes. So they're not completely U, but they are slightly curved and bent, really flat. Underneath those, I want to wing off some little eyelashes just off to the direction. So on the left-hand side, I want them to flick out to the left. On the right-hand side, I want them to flick out to the right. So I'm going to put these little dashes underneath. I'm going to put them on the right as well. They're just going to flick out to the edge of the face. Pardon me. I'm starting to get the sniffles. Around the eye area, just underneath it, just put two little notches. One's a C shape, one's a backward C shape, just for ears. And I usually do a bit of scribbling in there for some detail, literally just some scribble. At this size, they're so small, you can get away with inferring detail, you don't actually have to draw it. So, from there I think we're pretty good. I like to add the hair. I know this looks like it's a ton of negative space, and if you're scared of it, if you think the head is too big, at this point you might want to shrink it a little bit, which, you know, I'm kind of feeling like it's a touch too big. But typically when I've been drawing them straight onto the page, I haven't actually erased any of their structure. I think I just got carried away in my demo. So I'm going to kind of flatten out this teardrop shape a little bit. There we go, something more manageable. For the hair, put so many lines here now you won't be able to see. For the hair, I'm going to start right in the middle, up the top here, and I'm going to lightly and then heavily press my pencil into the page. I'm going to just go straight out the side here, almost like I'm doing a middle part. And I've got the face like this. Up in this hair section, I've got this middle. Say if we just did divide it like the, you know, the cross section that we have. Right in this quadrant here, if we divided these, this is where I want that hair to go. And I'm going to bring it up from the ears as well to go up there. So can you see how it's almost like we're doing a spider web with that, but it doesn't have to be perfectly, you know, geometrical, but that is where we're trying to end up. We're trying to end up over that way, halfway between the halfway point. It's a terrible way to describe it, but I hope you know what I mean. And then I'm going to just lightly press those lines in and then change up the pressure as I go. See how there's lots of line weight variation in there? I'm also going to come up from beside the ears and connect it to that point as well. Just a few lines. You don't have to put every strand of hair she's ever had in her head. You're just, again, inferring detail. You don't actually have to draw the whole thing out. So, she got a really big forehead. Some of these I've really taken liberties with, and they have massive foreheads. Some are a little cuter and it's a little shorter. Sometimes to really break up the forehead, I will just notch off her little eyebrows a little higher, so that they take up more space in this really blank negative space up here. We're also going to do a bit of shading, so it will come back in. Yeah, 5 head, but like a 12 head at this point, I think. Very model. So I'm going to just notch off these eyebrows. Good way to practice your expressions. You'll notice that if her eyebrows are up like this, she might look a little pleased with herself, or she might look very pleasant. If her eyebrows are slanting downways, she might look a little more savage, a little more severe. You could have one going up and one going kind of in. She looks a bit worried. Play with these little eyebrow shapes, but again, like the mouth, they're just notches. They're just angled notches at this point. Everything is such a little scribble. Do not stress yourself trying to get any perfect shapes here. I think it works really well the more expressive and loose you can be with it. From the middle point up here, so these little points where the two different parts meet, these little points over here, I'm going to run some little squiggles off the side of the head. She's going to have little pigtails, and I'm only going to do 2 or 3. And I'm really lightening up that pressure as I get out further with the squiggle. I almost want the squiggle to taper off to nothing, so I lighten up the pressure on my pencil. If you don't know what I mean by the pressure, I'm just going to explain it just in case anyone's missed it. This is me pushing really hard on my pencil. This is me pushing really lightly on my pencil. There's almost no pressure on there at all. Then I can go harder again, then I can go lighter again. This is how we get beautiful blending and shading, but it's also how we control the line weight, because if we're drawing lines, we can actually ease up on them and make this really interesting brush stroke texture. You can even do it with a pencil. I know it's typically done with brush pens or markers, but you can do it with a pencil and it's super effective. You can even do it with the mechanical pencil. As delicate as they are, you can get such an interesting line weight variation. I'm going to show you up close just so you can really see. That's a mechanical pencil. It's almost like we've made a brush pen out of a mechanical pencil. Sorry, let me check that I'm back in frame. There we go. Alright, so we've done that, and I want to lighten these squiggles up towards the edge, because I almost want her hair to fade off into nothing. And that's just one of the features that I like about them. From the bottom of her chin, just on either side of her mouth, we'll put a little notch. That's going to be her neck / where her body starts. These are very stylized, so they don't have specific bodies. It's actually a leaf shape. So if you want to draw a leaf shape over here, that's the body that we're applying to them. It's almost like an oval, but there's a point at either end. Instead of this point up here, that's where it's going to attach to our neck. So it's almost a light bulb shape at this point. I'm going to come off that neck. You can have this leaf go any way you want. If you wanted to have it swing off to the right, if you want to swing off to the left, you can have it, really twisted up if you want. But the idea is that her body is it's going from this thin neck up here, it's going wider, and then it's tapering in at the end. So however you decide to draw that, you might want to draw your leaf shape as a guide first, just so you know, and then you think, okay, great, now I'm just going to go around that. Hold your pencil back if you feel like you're going to overcorrect it. She doesn't need to have any perfect lines. This is a really nice shape, and can you see we've also got that very line width in there as well, that difference between dark and light. It's a nice contrast. From the bottom here, we're going to draw her tail. I'm not going to give you a full ribbons tutorial because I think you can see they get really wild and out of control, and it'd be its own lesson teaching ribbons. But one of the tricks that I like to do for it, say we're just going to do a squiggle like this. So we've just done, mountains, what do you call them? Loops? Is it loops? Hills. Hills and valleys, peaks and valleys. We're just going to do this kind of line that goes like that. From the end of the tail, I like to come back. Wherever there's a hump, I like to cross it over. And I'm doing the same thing that I did. I'm doing the hills and valleys, but I'm just crossing the lines until I reach the start again. Can you see how that's given us almost a ribbon? If you've learnt ribbons from me before, you'll know I just say to catch the bird at the top here. Wherever these cross, I like to put my... if I just catch the wings of that bird, it'll flatten it out. I'm not going to give you a full lesson on ribbons today, but if you want to know when they cross, I'll show you on this side. So let's just say we've done another little squiggle like this. Every time there's a peak, I'm going to cross it back over. You don't have to, I just find it the easiest way to do it. Wherever they cross, I'm just going to do a bit of shading on either side of the ribbon. It will give you this optical illusion that is where the ribbons are crossing anyway. Even though you can kind of see it, just so you don't have to worry about this catch the bird thing, because it'll take a little too long to explain that. But yeah, hopefully that'll be good for you. If not, just grab you can grab even one of these brush pens and just do your lines, focusing on changing the pressure. So you could just cheat, you don't have to draw the whole thing at all. You could just grab a brush pen and do it. And I think that would give you a beautiful tail anyway, just coming off the edge of her. I love ribbons. Ribbons are, I don't know, I've always been obsessed with ribbons. So what we're going to do on her body is we're going to do our scales, which are just these hills, but I've flipped them on these ones. I know Steve doesn't like it, but we love it, so let's just do it anyway. I'm going to draw a hill from either side of her body, and I'm just going to capture the bottom of her tail there. I'm going to do a bit of shading right in the middle, just because I like that. And that'll give me something to activate with water afterwards. And now the pattern, it can be symmetrical. Just remember to change up the pressure of your lines and get that really nice tapered stroke. But yeah, I don't need it to be symmetrical. Sometimes I'll just do random scales, but we're just repeating those loops all the way up and putting some shading in the middle of them. There's no real trick to it. I guess if you want them symmetrical, just make sure whatever you do on the left, you do on the right. And it's probably easier to work from the center and work out both ways. But I don't particularly need them symmetrical because I just like them however they flow. Sometimes I will, and I pretend that those mermaids are a little more type A. And the last thing I'm going to do with her arms is just right from where her neck meets that body, I'm just going to taper off just a stroke. They can go anywhere. Sometimes I like the arms to come down and meet each other. They're literally just dashes at this point. You can try and add the other side to them, but they're so small, you really wouldn't see a lot of that detail anyway. So I'm just going to give them strokes that taper off into nothing. I might even put a little dash at the end for a little hand. There you go. They do hold vines. Obviously, everything's been optional up until this point, but this is the most optional thing. I'm going to run a vine right through her hand like this. They're little pieces of seaweed, and the pattern that stems off of each side of these are little heart shapes. Really bad ones too, like they don't have to be good. And I just alternate on either side. I'm not hard and fast with the rule on these ones. Typically when I'm doing vines or leaf shapes, it's very mind-numbing for me, so I just enjoy whatever I feel like feels best for me at the time. If I want them to be symmetrical, I will. If I don't care, I'll just go for it. And then, oh, I do put a little bit of shading underneath her chin. That's all. That's her. That is her finished as far as drawing her out. So I hope you've had some success up until this point. We're going to grab our water brush now, or our paintbrush with some water. Either way, it's up to you. This is where the graphite will activate. Can you see how if we push some water into that, it's starting to make this grey shadow. I think in this instance, it would be a little harder to control with a paintbrush, so I'm just going to do it with the water brush. And the reason that is because when we push the water out of the barrel of this into the tip, it's not really pulling any of that pigment or that graphite back up. It's just pushing it. It's just pushing it around the page. It will pick up a little bit, but not as much as your brush will. A brush, like especially a natural hair bristle brush or something, or even a half synthetic, will pick up a lot of that pigment, and you're just going to find it really hard to get rid of it, because we're going to try and rely on the fact that we can activate it, but that we can also blend it out. We really want to just kind of practice our blending at this point. So if you've made any of these sketches on the side of the page with your pencil as you've been going, now's a good time just to practice activating it with water and seeing what kind of results you get. And the best part for these brushes in particular is if you do lay them flat, typically you can just activate that part and then the rest will kind of naturally blend out, because this is going to be clean down here where the water is coming out, and this is going to be full of your graphite at the tip. So it'll be kind of an easier way to get that to blend. And I say that because the first thing we're going to do is go around the forehead. So I want to push the tip of my Pentel Aquash into that first line of hair. Do not worry if you erase some of these lines, that's why we have the mechanical pencil. I'm going to turn my book as I do it because I find it easier to work on that angle. And can you see how we're blurring the edge of her face? This is how she's going to start to become a little dimensional. Now my tip is do not go below the eyes, because if you go into that jaw area, she's going to start to grow a beard. It's a small space to try and control, so my tip is just don't go down there. Just in her forehead. And you can go over it a couple of times and try and bring that shadow in even deeper if you want. I've just realized I'm doing this on hot press paper. Usually I would do this on cold press, so this is actually quite smooth, and this paper might peel a little bit, but we'll try not to. We'll try not to make it peel. We just can't go over it too many times is all. There we go. So we've given her a really soft shadow around her forehead. See how dimensional she looks already? That's kind of the tip. You want to be placing your shadows wherever you want to make things fall into the background or recede from your view. Typically anything that's spherical, like a head, would have the shadows on the outside if you want the light to shine directly on it. So don't need to get into shadows too much, but just a nice tip, especially when you're doing a face like that. Now I'm going to go into the parts of the hair that have the most pigment, dip my my water brush in there, and then just lightly trace over some of those lines in the hair. I want a lot of white space. I do not want to fill, ooh, getting a drip. I do not want to fill my hair with grey, and I don't want to activate all the graphite. But I do want to use some of it, especially in these little pigtails. I'm actually going to use some of it and just make its own little kind of like grey shadow squiggle. These might not be the things you notice when you first look at some of these, but I can guarantee you these are the things that make it look like there's just that extra little special bit of something going on. These really random details that I think kind of go unnoticed at first glance. So hopefully these are making you happy today. I'm going to go put my aquash inside the waterline, or her lash line, I guess. And I want to be careful with this part, because if I bring it too far up, it's just going to look like she's got crazy panda bear caught in a snowstorm eyes. So these are my lashes that I drew before, right? I want to create almost a little circle. So I just want to get that and then move it around in a circle. Can you see that? Even if you miss the part in the center, if that's lighter, that's even better, because you're going to create this little bit of dimension in those eyes. Very 20s and 30s looking little circular eyes. So let's just focus our aquash over those eyes and make little circles. We really don't want them to be too big. In fact, I'm kind of getting a little too outrageous with that left one. And then I'm going to use that in the lashes as well and just feather out some of those lashes just like that. So I'm just going to push those out. Again, don't worry if you're erasing some of the lines. We're going to go back in with our mechanical pencil at the end and put some of that detail back in. This graphite we put down is to give ourselves stuff to move around, some pigment to play with. There you go. Will you be putting a recording of this on the blog? Missed the first? Yes, I will be. Oh, thanks, Victory. Yes, I'm planning on it. I'm going to do the same thing we did with the blend on the forehead. I'm going to do it under the chin as well. So I'm just pushing into that graphite under the chin, and I'm just going to let it sit like that. And now here's the fun part. Activate all of this graphite in the tails. When you leave the page with your brush, sorry, I'm literally on a repeat there. I was parroting myself in real time. When you leave the page with the brush, leave it down in the darkest part, because sometimes you'll pick up a puddle and see how, like, right there, I've squished it all around, but then when I left the page, there's a dot that's darker than anything else. That's because it's leaving that droplet of water with most of the graphite on it on the page. So you can help yourself out here when you're doing your shading by leaving that part down in the part of the scale that you want to be the darkest. So typically down the bottom. So that's why I'm going to kind of, when I scrub, I'm going to scrub from the top so that I can leave a lot of that darker pigment down the bottom. There's a way to pick it up, but I think you can actually just use it to your advantage by scrubbing downwards into the darkest part of the scale. See that? See how we're leaving that dark part in there? It's like an instant shadow that you don't need to worry about. So just scrub from the top, pushing in. These are pretty durable, these Pentel Aquash. I think they're nylon or something. So I mean, this has lasted for years. I've had this. I don't typically love water brushes, but for something like this, it actually makes a whole lot more sense to use a water brush to control this graphite than to use a paintbrush. So I'm just going to run with that today. Pushing those in there. Doesn't have to be neat. If you've gone outside the lines, don't worry about it at all. You could even use this to put some of your graphite into the vine. I actually typically don't do anything to the vines on mine, but I don't know, just feel like it. And then all the places where our ribbons cross, I'm just going to add a bit of shading and then just feather it across the tail. I don't want to color in the tail, and again, I do want to kind of make it a bit darker where it crosses, just to imply that those are the shadows. But I've gotten real wild and messy on some of these tails. Like, if you really look closely at them, especially in the downloads, because all of these are available as downloads on my blog, you can see just how messy I get. I'm really not particular or pedantic about it. Oh, I've missed a scale. There we go. And that has been most of it. The only thing we're going to do now is right at the end, I'll grab my mechanical pencil, my Pilot OPT 0.5. I watched that happen in slow motion. That just like rolled and jumped out of my hand at the same time. I'm going to do the same thing that I did at the start, where I vary up the pressure and I just put little detail lines everywhere. This is going to look even better because this width of pencil is different to the first width of pencil. So you're getting a third layer of detail that you may not notice when you first look at it, but is definitely enhancing kind of the whimsy of it. So I'm typically I'll put the little strands on the inside of the head again to kind of bring in that hairline, especially if the forehead's gone real crazy. And I might even put one in the pigtails. Sometimes I do like to put some down by the ears as well, just really, really tiny ones. They may not show up for you on screen, but I know they're there. I'm going to lightly scribble on the outside of the eyelids. So if I had to put an extra bit of shadow, I'd put it on the outside and a touch on the inside. That'll really dimensionalize those eyelids. So I'll put that there, just a little bit more. And these are just scribbles. I'm not trying to get a perfect blend here or anything. They're just scribbles. They're just really tiny scribbles. So, oh, have I done that to her mouth? What happened there? Lucky it's all graphite and I can erase it. I don't think you can erase it once it's been activated with water, but for the most part you can erase it. And then I'm going to put extra lashes on because we always add lashes, and then once we wash them away, we always add more. She can have many, many, many feathered lashes. And in fact, if you look closely, do they not look like little baby octopi on her eyelids? Like if you just gave these Sometimes I'll even feather the lashes inwards as well, but if you just gave them little eyes, don't they look like little weird squid octopus things? I don't know, maybe it's just me. Weird jellyfish? Underneath, I might do a bit of scribbling underneath her chin. Try not to burnish anything into the page, and by that I mean like really press super hard into things, unless your lead is dark. Otherwise you're going to get this really annoying kind of gloss or shine to the graphite that pushes in there. I don't know if this is the actual lead that came with the pencil. I'm pretty sure it is, because I have a few of these. Or it's a Pentel 2. You know what? Maybe it's a 2B. I think this is a 2B as well, because it feels and looks the same as this. Yeah, it probably is. You want a darker color, because you don't want them to kind of reflect. Otherwise, it gets annoying when you're looking at it, but B, I just think you start to lose a lot of detail if you've got that glossy, waxy kind of finish. Anyway, off topic. Sometimes I'll put a little extra shading in the scales, but I would probably bring back this pencil and do it. Just some scribbles, because I don't want it to be too neat. I want you to know that I wasn't precious about it, but then I got a little precious about it, but then I didn't. That's the look, right? Oh, I've forgotten one of my favorite parts. I'm a fool, Kim. I'm going to pick up some graphite from here because I need it. I'm putting 2 little ovals underneath her eyes for her little cheeks. Sorry, how could I forget that? Emoji octopi, yes, it absolutely is. Thank you, Linda. Oh, everyone's commenting on it. It totally is. You guys made me ink. There you go. And then I'm going to put some scribble texture / shading again in the ribbons where they fold, where they twist, or where they cross-section each other. And to be honest, that is her finished. That is her done. That is all I do to them. That is the entire Mermaid 2020 tutorial. Hey Beth, I couldn't give you any more than that because that's all I've been doing for them. I think the real fun of it is playing with, you know, the different looks, the different body poses. I think getting the different hairstyles, deciding how maybe you want to do completely different seaweed, or even still, if you wanted to. I know some people might think I'm about to ruin this, but don't worry, I'm fine. Even picking up some of this old watercolor and dashing it into some parts of this mermaid, so that your shadows are colored and have this beautiful tint to them. You could really start to make something magical out of the entire thing. That won't look like mine. I mean, you don't have to make it look like this. I would love for you to take any techniques, even if you're not doing a mermaid today. If you just want to take one of these techniques in blending or shading or ribbons, I just want you to have fun with it, and I want you to use it in a way that's going to make you feel excited to crack out a journal and put scribbles all through it. But I also want you to feel empowered and encouraged to use this and to have it look exactly like this if that's what you want to. But for anyone that wants to depart from this, I think it would be really fun to start adding certain colors into the shadow areas. Rather than coloring the whole thing in, just kind of tinting it. James, I'm taking a whimsical illustration class, but I'm really struggling with being too tight. How can I force myself to loosen up? Oh, there you go. Good question. How do you force yourself? I mean, forcing yourself is just forcing yourself, right? I think you need to get a journal or a piece of paper or something that isn't precious to you. Sometimes I notice people get really hung up if the journal they're working in is too expensive, or if the supplies they're using make them feel intimidated that they have to create something good with them. My encouragement is that you would always use your nicest stuff because you deserve to use it and you have it. And the best thing that can happen is you use it all up and you have a reason to get more of it. But you don't have to if that's getting in your way. I think you really do have to address what might be getting in your way. Because, yeah, being too tight. How do you loosen up? I think if it's something literally within your wrist, if it's something about drawing that you literally feel tight about, I would suggest doing lots of warm-up sketches and pages. So taking subject matter that you really like and just doing it on repeat to get yourself going. Again, without expectation. Usually expectation gets in the way and makes us upset. But one of my favorite things to do to calm myself down or to like loosen myself up is to do brush stroke brushstroke anything really, but brushstroke leaves on vines. I don't know why, I zone out with it. I could fall asleep doing it. I could literally just fall asleep in my ink doing it. And the more I do it, the more I find that, especially because a lot of what you're doing is about shapes and the way that you decide to put them in, you know, especially with something like this, the more I do it, if I was about to go and draw this all over again, perhaps I would be a lot more expressive about my lines at that point, because I've got the base down, I know what I want it to kind of look like, but I'm loose. Even this, it'll give it a completely different look. Sorry, I know we're not supposed to be going on a separate tangent here, but it's a good question. People do get tight and rigid and loose. I think it's always important to address what it might be if you have some kind of an idea. But if not, there are definitely exercises that can help you get out of that. It just looks like a lot of kind of like repetition. Oh, sorry, there's a second part to this. I'm not James, but it helped me to get some crappy paper and make something ugly on purpose. Then sometimes I would go back and fix them, and sometimes not. It helps me a lot. Yeah, totally. You also hold your pencil quite far back, James. That tip helped me. Yes, if I don't want to overcorrect myself, because sometimes I'll do this and I'll want it to look really sketchy, but I'll end up going in there and making a perfect body, and then suddenly the look is completely different. So I will just push it back so that I can't control it. Some people say to put it in your other hand. That makes me feel uncomfortable, and I feel like it's not. Then I feel like it's just kind of, I don't know. I have a weird thing about putting it in my other hand, my non-dominant hand. I will just typically hold it further back, because it's more just a reminder, like, this doesn't have to be a good line. Yeah. Those are all really good tips. I think a lot of people try a lot of different things. For me, I has been a long time since I've felt really tight and rigid about something, but typically my own expectations get in the way, or and especially like I've only been really, since I've been doing Instagram Live, have been going nuts in these art journals, because I have a bunch of art journals that are really beautiful, and even though they're not super precious, like sometimes they get a little precious and I have to make them not precious again, but sometimes I think, well, I've only got a certain amount of pages left in that, so I should save that for something better. And I'll grab a loose piece of paper. Even today, I was about to grab this loose piece of paper because I didn't want to put it in this journal, because that journal only has one page left. And this, literally, since I put my 30 journals together, oh, pardon me, I bound my 30 journals last week. I'm still in that place where I sometimes think that. So maybe we just have to remind ourselves at points of the same things we already know we've kind of gotten over before, but, you know, are just our own personal struggles. I'm not quite sure, because I was going to do it on this piece of paper today, and there's no need. I had a full journal here, I've got a full journal here, I've got another full journal over there, and I'm going to put it on this paper just so I can stick it in my journal. Like, that makes no sense. But yeah, it made total sense when I only had 2 or 3 journals. You know, I didn't want to ruin anything. So hopefully, it sounds like your setup's going well. I hope that helps in some way. I started out super heavy-handed, but made things intentionally wonky really helped me. For sure. I found actually repetition of the same thing made me realize that I didn't really care for the first one. Like, most of the time they got better as I kept going, which I think is, you know, obvious, but unless I found that I would do them side by side and do like 8 in a row, and I would like number 3 or number 5. So that really helps me kind of loosen up, because I think, oh, the best is yet to come, and so I get through it all, and then I get excited for what might be coming down the pipeline. It's the same thing that happens in Sketchflix. I actually get really, really I used to get really down on myself that the first 10-15 minutes were a bit of a write-off, because all the ideas were really obvious or cliched, or I was just drawing what I was seeing, and I wanted to be more, I wanted better ideas than that. But I noticed that I just had to push through those first 10-15 minutes, and then things would start to be a little more organic. So perhaps it's just that same barrier that we all kind of face, where we just have to get over that first hump, and the rest feels a lot more smooth. Yeah. Victory, are you going to bind the journals together? I think I will. I don't know. I have this theory that at the end, I'll have done so many Instagram lives, and Steve will be such a journal girl that we'll have so many of these journals we could make a massive bound hardcover book, and it could just be our whole quarantine experience bound into a book. Because this is the one that we typically do on... I think everything in here was done on Instagram. No, I lie. These were done for YouTube. But everything in here has been filmed in one way or another. So this has been quite an experience. Hopefully, actually, yeah, if you want to, make sure you pop on the lives if you're ever interested, because sometimes Steve joins us, and Steve's a really good case study in breaking through that first feeling a little too tight. But I think you'll do really well. Anyway. Oh yes, and sell copies. Anya's always trying to get me to sell something. Oh, pardon me. Ooh. Here we go. That would be an awesome book. Thank you, Victory. I'm going to leave that with you here. I possibly might be on later. I love this. This was Steve's practice page, but I can't bring myself to do anything with it. I told him to scan it the other day. It just looks like zebras. I'm going to leave that here. I'm going to put this up on my blog as well, so if you want to watch the replay or see it another time and try it again or try any of the other techniques, please feel free to do so. I just want you to have fun and enjoy it. Thank you so much for joining me for Merbèbè, and I'll see you again really, really soon. Bye, everyone.